Hey guys, welcome back to First and 10 over here on Clueless Gamers. I'm your host, Pete, joined as always by my co-host, Brian. In just a second, guys, we are back for another week of NFL football. Week number 15 is what we're going to be making picks for here. Huge week, Brian. Last month of the season here. Down the stretch, we've had some division winners. Kind of seems like, even though nothing has been officially clinched, we know who's going to be the top seed, probably at least in the AFC. Some of these positions are now for these playoff teams or potential playoff teams are slotting in exactly where we think they're going to, barring anything crazy. And some other big news around the NFL, from team controversy to a former NFL future Hall of Fame coach going and getting another deal in college football. But before we get into all of that stuff, Bri, I welcome you in, man. How are you, and what are you excited to talk about tonight?
Yeah, very good. Like you said, down the stretch we go. Another season getting into the late stages. Only just a few short weeks left to go, and then it's playoff time, where hopefully we'll be on each week the
Yes.
month of January. It's always fun, of course, playoff football. But yeah, you talked about teams clinching. How about the way the Chiefs did last week with the
Doink for
doink
the
off the
division.
upright and in with the kicker in that game against the Chargers? Just another game that the Chiefs just continue to
Honestly, at
do
this
this
point, it's
week after
annoying.
week. Yeah, it's you could definitely make that case, and I mean, we talked a lot about the Chiefs last time, so I think we're going to focus our attention on some other things. But one thing we're not going to do, not get too deep into the locals, because there's just not much there. I mean,
Yeah.
season's over. The bye, they're just not even worth it at this point.
Yeah, I know you're the locals guy here on this podcast. Obviously, your favorite team is the New York Jets. Played actually one of their better games of the season this past week against Miami. Certainly Rodgers' best game since he was in Green Bay, but they still lost in overtime. So yeah, not worth talking about, and we like to shed a light on all teams that we can. So, Brian, with that being said, before we jump into picks, discussions of games last week, all the stuff that we normally do here, and we appreciate you turning in, we're going to do something a little unusual, but as I said and teased at the top, you should know what I'm already talking about. We're going to talk about a college hiring, but because it has such a massive kind of legacy implication. And of course, I'm talking about Bill Belichick, the former New England Patriots head coach, future Hall of Famer, obviously first ballot one day. For the moment, is the GOAT coach, I would say. Now, will he be the GOAT coach 5 years from now with maybe Andy Reid doing what he's doing? Maybe not. But for now, he is the GOAT coach. We know everything. 6 Super Bowls with New England, 2 as a defensive coordinator with the New York Football Giants. He goes to UNC, the University of North Carolina, Brian, a 5-year deal, which is really a 3-year deal because the first 3 are guaranteed, and then it looks like they could kind of opt out or move on, or maybe he switches to his sons who are going to be on the staff in the final 2 years, getting roughly about $10 million per year. So a healthy contract there for college. And we know he has some family ties there back from his father at UNC. Some of his favorite players have gone there. We can understand that connection, but Bri, we'd be lying if we didn't say this feels like an odd move. And we talked last week. You actually were the one that kind of brought it up in kind of your ending segment, as you do when you kind of call to a couple storylines right before we get out of here. And you mentioned this and said, hey, does this kind of signal that he doesn't think he's going to get an NFL job? And I said, yeah, that could be a possibility. You were 100% right on that. I think that is the feeling. I think the reports of what people close to him have said, where he's kind of disgusted with NFL leadership. We know the stories from about a couple years ago where even up until last year with kind of their, the NFL owners meetings, where Robert Kraft, significant amount of power as the New England Patriots owner, really shed some dirt on Belichick, might have kind of undermined him in some coaching potential interviews, and certainly in the Atlanta situation, because we know Kraft and Arthur Blank, the Falcons owner, talked. That might have swung that another way. So it seems like that was part of the decision where, yes, he doesn't believe he will get back to the NFL, but hey, I mean, you have to look at it on the positive side, I would say, more than a negative, because yes, this is a risk, but if he can turn this program around, Bri, and turn them into something along the lines what Deion Sanders has been able to do, Prime has been able to do at Colorado in that early makings in those first couple of years, that could add to his legacy, and there could be something there at a school that is typically about basketball, not football. Where do you kind of fall down on this huge news that Bill Belichick is now going to be the head coach of UNC?
Yeah, it's very surprising. It's really kind of hard to wrap your brain around
Yeah.
that a guy who had the highest level of success, or we came to know him in one place for so long with New England, as you mentioned, to now take the step after 1 year off from coaching, where he's doing all these media ventures, to dip into the college ranks. But what you would think is, if he was going to go that route, that he would be looking at a brand name
Yeah,
program. Now, I
absolutely.
don't necessarily know which one would have a potentially an opening. I mean, there might not be one out of like the top 10
Yeah.
programs that you come to know of. But it still just seems very surprising to go to this place in particular. And I know about the family roots and all of that, and perhaps that factored into the decision. But do I look at Bill Belichick in a situation where he's going to be coaching the North Carolina football team and think this is going to be a raging success? I just don't see it. At his age,
Yeah.
coaching college kids,
With
it's
NIL,
very different.
you know.
Right. There's a lot of changes in college sports lately. It's become kind of totally different, even just the last few years. And it's just an odd fit. I heard a radio host that I work with on Sirius who made the analogy. It would be like taking Phil Jackson, having him coach Notre Dame basketball,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
kind of what it's like.
Yeah.
And so it's very strange to get used to a program that is not known as a big football school. Now, they have produced a couple recent first round quarterbacks with Drake May and,
Mm-hmm.
remember, Mitch Trubisky.
Yep.
So it's not like, they've
Yeah,
had
they're not
nobody. They've had
barren.
Julie. Right. Julius Peppers was a star there before he was a first rounder in the NFL. So it's not a school like it's been bereft of NFL talent, but it's also not one that has done any kind of noise as far as winning,
No.
any big. So I mean, yeah, it would be a huge accomplishment if he could get this team to the
Oh,
playoff, which
massive.
now we know is an expanded field. You have 12 teams. Who knows? It might even expand more. I just find it to be a very weird fit, and I can't say I see it being very successful.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Also, Lawrence Taylor, also a former Tar Heel there as well, so we know how much he loves Lawrence Taylor. I get some of that stuff, right? It feels. I don't think desperate's the right word, but clearly he had an itch to go back into coaching. I think that was kind of clear on all his media stints. The way he talked about it, he didn't seem like he fully committed into it. He was more personable, but he was still Bill Belichick. And it just seems like he had eye back to coaching, and I respect that, right? Like, if that's his passion, even at 72 years old, and he still has some left in him, I totally understand that. But now the reported staff, in that 400-page plus binder Bible that he gave to the school, that they had to amend some things and come to an agreement, and he set up this gigantic plan and everything else. This is reportedly McDaniels and Matt Patricia and all these guys, Michael Lombardi in the front office formerly, like all these guys are reported that they might come along to UNC, including his sons as well. I don't know. I don't know how successful that is if they're trying to make like a New England Patriots 2.0 or 3.0, however you want to characterize it. And do I think on one end the NIL helps him, even though he has no experience in college football? He obviously has no experience with the new college football. The NIL is about buying players. It's kind of like a free agency kind of period. And at least that's a familiar situation that he's used to in the NFL, as opposed to back in the day when they were wrongfully not paying college players, at least not publicly paying them. You had to go into these homes and recruit. I don't see a 72-year-old Bill Belichick doing that. I don't see a 40-year-old Bill Belichick doing that. So now that at least the money will talk here, maybe he could drive up boosters. He's talked about that reportedly in his 400-page plan there about how they want to raise a ton of money, they want to build an education system, they want to prepare these young men for their next stage in life, whether it be the pros or something else. I can respect all that. I just don't know the level of success he could have on an elite level. I really question that.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's not like he's taking the job at Ohio State where
Right.
you know you're getting top end talent and the chance for success is just much higher. You're going to North Carolina, like you said, it's known as a basketball school.
Yeah.
It'd be like coaching Duke football. I mean, right? They're kind of
Exactly.
on a similar playing field. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be weird to get used to, like watching press conferences again where he's talking about Tar Heels football
Yeah.
when
It's
for
gonna be
so long
strange.
it was the Patriot hoodie. Talking about Tom Brady, of course, year after year. The other thing that shouldn't get lost is like it didn't end great for him in New England.
No.
Those last couple of years were not good.
No.
And so the post Brady era, I mean, he got to the playoffs once there, right, with Mac
Got
Jones
blasted.
quarterbacking, blasted by the Bills in Buffalo, and then it was downhill after that.
Yep.
So I mean, I'm very interested to see. I don't fault him. Clearly he
No.
wants to work. This is what he loves to do. He wants to get another opportunity, and sensing that NFL offers weren't on the table. I think he just went the plan B route. And the other thing that's been brought up is that it looks like could coach for a few years and then turn the job over
Right.
to his son, who he's bringing with on the staff, who supposedly has been clamoring for head coaching jobs, and maybe that's a good way for him to get that first job. So I can't fault any of that.
Yeah, I can't fault you getting your kid a job and helping them get a leg up in life. He's helped them so much. There's nothing wrong with that. I just, you know what? I'll say this before we wrap up. The one thing that this absolutely unequivocally does is UNC football next year is 1,000 times more interesting. It just is. Like, were you going to honestly turn on a Tar Heels game? No. Now you will. Right now it will get national media coverage. People will talk about it, at least, unless they're like 0-8. But people initially will talk about it, just like they did with Prime in Colorado. And we've
Yep.
seen what he's been able to do there. Maybe Bill Belichick has enough name cachet that players will start signing here. Top level 4 and 5 star recruits. You don't know what's going to happen. Money talks, and if they could have something get behind that, plus all his knowledge, and if the plan is laid out there, could have something happen. I'm fascinated to watch. I'm still processing that it actually is true. It was kind of confirmed yesterday. It just I am a little saddened, I'll be honest, as a final point, that I kind of wanted him to get one last NFL shot and to not have that. And I'd say almost like a 95% chance that he's never going to coach in the NFL again. That kind of stinks. I will say that.
Yeah. And I think kind of the omen was there a little bit when you heard that he was interviewing for the Falcons job for last season, and they bypassed the opportunity to
For
hire
Raheem
Bill
Morris.
Belichick.
Yeah.
Raheem Morris, yeah. So that kind of sounded off the alarm bells, like, whoa, and maybe he's just teams just aren't interested anymore at this point with his age and whatever other factors it may be. I mean, he's not the easiest guy to get along
No,
with, as we
not at all.
know. He wants to have full control of personnel, which is not something that a lot of coaches have anymore in the NFL. So all those things I think kind of played into it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch for sure. Brian, let's switch back to NFL football. And we're going to talk about two games really quickly here because we're kind of on a time limit tonight, so I apologize that to the audience, but we're still going to give you some good content. So I want to go over to the Panthers and the Eagles. The Eagles win this game 22-16, and honestly, Bri, they keep their winning streak going. All that goes on. They're lucky they kind of won this game. Bryce Young, a chance on a 98-yard drive at the end of the game, throws the ball right to Xavier Legette, and he kind of dives for it, and he doesn't need to, drops it, and it would have been a touchdown where, yes, there would have been about 40-ish seconds, 45 seconds left in the game, but would have put the Panthers up by 1, and there would have been a chance to beat the Eagles in Philadelphia. A scare going on there. We've talked a lot this season about Philly's defense, how much they've improved. The rookies and Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. These guys have come on. Zach Bond, who's come out of nowhere. All of these guys that have played well. Maybe you'll talk about that part. Maybe you'll talk about specific parts of the game. I want to talk about the stuff surrounding after this game and now in the few days since Sunday. They win this game, and Jalen Hurts kind of been doing what he's doing lately. Has a very pedestrian 14 for 21 for 108 yards and a couple touchdowns. And both Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown after the game make pretty direct comments about being upset about the passing game not being where they think it could be, that they're not communicating the same, all of this stuff. Even though they just won, they have this huge streak. They're probably going to be the number 2, have a chance of being the number 1 seed in the NFC. And, Jalen says some stuff to it, but not as nearly as biting as they did. And then Brandon Graham, who got hurt in the Rams game, tore, I believe, his tricep. He's out for the season. He gets on his own radio show and says that, Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown aren't friends anymore. And that's attributed to some of that stuff. And he stirred up a whole bunch of things. Then the next day walked back the comments and said, he was just assuming, he shouldn't be saying things, of what he's, doesn't fully know what he's talking about, all this stuff. And it just feels like, for me, Bri, a second consecutive season that this team is really, really good. I think they've been better this year than last year, because we talked about how they were kind of fraudulent last year. And they're self-sabotaging, seemingly, again. Like, what is going on in Philadelphia? And is this a player's issue of them not getting along and they need to kind of grow up? Or is this like a head coaching thing where Nick Sirianni is kind of not taking the reins over this situation?
Yeah, I think both are factors there. You can't have this fester for 2 years in a row because it completely damaged last year's season after what was a promising start. We've well documented what happened at the end of their season where they just completely fell apart to the point where they were losing home games against bad teams, limp into the playoffs, and they get crushed by Baker Mayfield and the Bucks, which is never in the game. This year, the season starts, they kind of are up and down to start. They go 2-2 through the first 4 games. Now they haven't lost since. So the overarching thing for me is the team is winning right now. So the formula is working. We know it's been dominated by the running game and Saquon Barkley's MVP caliber season. They haven't had a great passing attack this year. But if you're in that locker room, you should be satisfied with the fact that the team is winning games. Your numbers might not be there, like for A.J. Brown. And we've seen this with him before. I think it was 2 years ago. He started chirping because he wasn't getting the ball. And then, that kind of turned around. They started beating him. Right, and he was happy again. But it's just another one of these kind of diva cases with wide receivers, which we see all
bad in particular.
No doubt. And but I just feel like, the team is winning. So regardless of how they're getting it done, and I mean, they've had a lot of impressive wins. It's not like they're skating by.
They're beating good teams.
It hasn't been a Chiefs case where they're squeaking by a field goal, misplay here that they're taking advantage of. I mean, they go into Baltimore and win against a tough team. This was like the first game where they didn't really play well in a long time. I mean, the fact that they were down at one point in a game that they were a 2-touchdown favorite.
Yeah, which we said was too much. We both said that last week.
Yeah. But I just feel like this is a case of like egos getting in the way too much, which I feel like with this team, they got a lot of talent, yes, but they also have a lot of ego, and to me just doesn't add up to a completely winning formula. Like, I think this team talent-wise is good enough to win the Super Bowl. I think mentality-wise, they're not there. And Nick Sirianni, we still have our questions about him, whether he can get it done in the big game. And I think he's in part to blame, too, for these locker room issues that are going on now back-to-back years. They've got to get it under control because they're good enough, but they get in their own way, it seems.
Yeah, they have this great owner, this great front office. They have a weak head coach. That's just the bottom line. It's a weak head coach who doesn't call the plays. He doesn't really do anything. This is supposed to be his area, right? If you're a head coach that doesn't call on either side of the ball, you're an organizational structure guy, right? Well, how are you letting your team 2 years in a row do this kind of stuff and chirp about each other? I just think it's ridiculous. I looked up some of the comments as you were talking. Like, Jalen Hurts came out and said, like, oh, the one thing you could say about Jalen Hurts is he wins. He talked in third person. Then they asked, A.J. Brown a couple days later, and he goes, oh, I wasn't talking necessarily about Jalen in the passing game. I was talking about our passing attack. I'm like, doesn't that directly involve the quarterback of the passing attack? Like just some really weird comments where like you're walking it back, but you really can't because you pretty specifically said what was going on, and then just saying, yeah, me and Jalen are good. Didn't feel like that was like, oh, we're best friends or we're even close as teammates or that this relationship is good. Felt like really a lie, right? Like, kind of when like you'll ask your girlfriend or your wife like, I'm fine. Oh, yeah, she goes, I'm fine. And she's not. That's very much what that felt like. I don't
Right.
like any of the stirring going on. I think Brandon Graham, what he said was an accidental, or as AJ Brown said, oh, he's just emotional. I think he said straight up the truth, and it just was like, oh crap, this looks bad. Let's all walk this back at the same time. When there is smoke, there is fire. We said that a million times last season with this Eagles team. I believe even a better Eagles team, we are seeing it yet again. You're having a guy in Saquon Barkley that's having an historic MVP-like season where he has a chance still on pace to break Eric Dickerson's all-time rushing record. And you're chirping about targets, dude? You just got paid a boatload of money. You're not in a contract year. You're not a rookie. You're not someone who's underpaid. And this is what you're talking about. I just feel like it is selfishness. It is definitely what you said. It is ego from both of the wide receivers there. Maybe Jalen to a degree as well. And it just mixes as a really, really bad brewing concoction there in Philadelphia. I will say, Brian, just as before we get off this game, Panthers deserve a ton of credit. I know you go, Pete, the 3-10. They, since Bryce Young has come back off the bench, they've competed in every game. He has looked significantly better. Leggett, like I said at the top of this, he catches the ball. They probably win this game. They deserve a lot of credit. And Bryce Young down the stretch in games that are quote unquote not meaningful, the Panthers are taking these seriously, and Bryce Young is trying to prove that he is a franchise quarterback for next season. Quickly, what is kind of a take you have on the Panthers side of the ball? Do they deserve a little bit of respect as they kind of play spoiler here at the end of the season?
Yeah, I think a little bit. I think sometimes, it could be the best thing that happens to you is you get benched, like in Bryce Young's case. And there were a lot of pundits who, after that happened, thought his career in Carolina was over, that they were going to trade him. As you know, there were people who had him being traded to the Rams, which you
Yeah,
didn't agree with.
insane.
But it really seems like that break, sometimes it can give you an opportunity to clear your head a little
Yeah,
bit, and then you get back out there, you're just a different version of yourself. And I think that's what we've seen with Bryce Young. He clearly has been rejuvenated. I think that little bit of a mental break really helped him. And, I don't know that he's ever going to be an elite quarterback, but
yeah.
maybe he could be a serviceable starter in the NFL. And it might not be what they thought they were drafting, number one overall, but hey, maybe he turns into a winning quarterback. It's nice to see signs pointing in the right direction for a franchise that has just been, awful for quite a while now.
Yeah, I think in the QB age, as I would call it here, we kind of get lost and think these quote unquote superhuman, superhero quarterbacks are the only quarterbacks could win the whole dance. The history's proven that's not the case. And I think even in this era, if you're a solid quarterback and then you have kind of a manageable contract that you could surround that player with tons of talent, they can be really good and go far. I mean, not starting this debate right now, but I could argue that with Brock Purdy last season, right? He's surrounded by a ton of players. I think he's a good quarterback, probably above average, but I don't think he's a superstar. And he went all the way to the overtime in the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think there's an element there. I don't know if Bryce Young could even get to that level of success that Brock Purdy has, but I think where I was very down on him at the beginning of the season, where I was like, this guy looks dead in the water. They might have to move on from him. This might be one of the worst kind of first round draft picks, first overall picks we've seen in 25 years. He has saved, I think, his career. We'll see what he does the next, 3 or 4 weeks. But I have been impressed. If they could have some receivers actually catch the ball over there in Carolina, beside Adam Thielen, I think they might have more of a shot in some of these games. Brian, the only final game I want to go over to, because as I said, we're on a little bit of a time limit, is of course We don't normally talk about the Rams here, but the Rams beat the Bills in maybe the game of the year, definitely the game of the week, 44-42, an absolute barn burner in Los Angeles where, no shocker, there was like 35% Buffalo Bill fans in the stadium, and the Rams had in some moments go to a silent count, but what else is new for Rams home football? Um, this is a game where Josh Allen, first quarterback ever since like I think the 50s to have 3 rushing touchdowns and 3 passing touchdowns in the same game. He was absolutely incredible. But this Buffalo defense got shredded by Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, and Cooper Kupp. They torched this defense to around about 37 points. The Rams had a blocked field goal. A blocked punt in there as well. First one since 2018. It was a miracle to see a special teams touchdown. But Bri, I'll switch it over to you before I give my thoughts on this game. What'd you think of the Rams holding on, pulling this one out, and getting to above 500 for kind of the first time this season?
Well, I looked to the late stages of this game because it seemed like they pushed all the right buttons late, where they had a 3-point lead. They go for it on that fourth down rather than the field goal, which you put yourself in a precarious spot if you kick a field goal in that spot and go up 6 and give the ball back to Josh Allen, and they ended up scoring a touchdown. You end up losing this game. So instead,
Yep.
I like the aggressiveness from McVay to go for it. I think later on that drive, it resulted in the Nakua touchdown, the little wide receiver screen that
Yep.
he took on a catch and run. I mean, he just continues his remarkable
Insane.
play. I mean, this guy, him, I know you think Cup is showing his age a little bit, but he also
He's been
continues
good.
to be productive. Yeah, but Puka, I mean, this guy looks like he could be, maybe the best receiver in the game in years to come.
He's
Like
good.
he's just the full package. But yeah, this game it kind of had like a feel of a college football game, like a
Yeah.
Big 12 game with the amount of points that were scored. I mean, Josh Allen's performance, I felt like for him, it kind of cemented his MVP case. I mean,
It's getting
throwing for
there.
3, running for 3, I really think he's going to be there, especially because like he didn't really have a lot of support as far as the running game outside of his own running game. Like they didn't do anything with James Cook in this game,
Yeah.
and then Allen runs for 82 yards and 3 touchdowns. So it was a wild one. I was impressed that the Rams were able to keep up with the Bills and their high flying
Me too.
offense. And the Rams, to me, showed they're still very much alive as far as potentially a playoff position this year. So obviously, big game tonight, which we're going to get into Thursday night, or division rival against the Niners. But yeah, this was a wild one last week for
Yeah, I think
sure.
it was a huge win. It definitely shocked me. I thought this team would get blown out like they did the last time they played Buffalo and lost by 3 touchdowns. They showed a lot of backbone. Now that defense was not good at all. The secondary is pretty atrocious tonight. As we'll talk about, they're going to be without one of their top corners in Kobe Durant, and he's average at best anyway. They have some serious things to address going into the offseason in the back end, really that back 7. This pass rush up front is pretty great. The issue is they're very young and they overrun a lot of running lanes and running gaps. And I think we've seen that time and time again with quarterbacks with somewhat okay, like a Brock Purdy, to excellent mobility, like a Josh Allen. They get shredded by those kind of quarterbacks. And that is a huge issue. You can't be allowing over 80 yards, Josh Allen or not. It's back-breaking 3rd and 10s, 3rd and 7s, second and 15s. Like, these things cannot be happening. I think the defense is going to be a huge Achilles heel right now. That's something to look at. I understand you're playing Josh Allen, but there's not a lot of other amazing pieces on this offense. I would have liked to see them get a little more pass rush and a few more stops out there on the field. And the Rams' offensive side of the ball, I mean, Matt Stafford right now, since he's got Kupp and Puka back, he's on an absolute heater right now. He hasn't, knock on wood, hasn't thrown an interception in the last 4 games. Going for a 5th straight game tonight, which if he does that, it'll be the first time in his career. He's been absolutely excellent, and wow, huge shocker. Quarterback that gets his 2-star wide receivers back suddenly is a whole lot better. I mean, like, the people that were so down on Stafford and all these things, I'm like, yeah, he looks a little washed at times, sure, but he's 37. Like, what do you expect is going to happen when he's out there with, no offense, playing with Tyler Johnson and Tutu Atwell. I'm sorry. And an offensive line that is bottom probably 24 in the league. Like they're maybe 7th, 8th worst in the league, sometimes 4th worst in the league. Like they're bad when they don't have a lot of their starters. They finally in the last game or so, last about game and a half, have had all 5 of the starters they seem comfortable with. Rob Havenstein at right tackle coming back has been monumental to helping this team out. An absolute veteran, the only St. Louis Rams still left on this actual team. I will say this is a huge game tonight. We'll get into it, but this game against the Bills, it reminded me a lot of that Monday night game against Kansas City a few years ago, back when they had Jared Goff. It was just a back and forth spectacle, extremely exciting, and I was just happy to hold on for the win in the end.
Yeah. And how about the fact you mentioned not much of a pass rush? I think I saw in this game like the total stats as far as points and yards, and there were no turnovers and no sacks.
Yeah.
So I mean, you talk about a game where the offense is dominated. Just well, the thing was the game that you just referenced. There were like pick sixes and defensive scores in that game with the Chiefs and Rams. That you're right. That was one of the more memorable games. That Monday nighter. What was the final?
54,
both
51,
teams were,
I believe.
yeah, that was probably the most insane football game I've seen.
Yeah, one of the most insane games I've ever watched. This one's going to go in that bucket, too. I mean, this was a crazy game. So, yeah, the one thing I will say before we move off this game and get into the Thursday night game, Josh Carty, the Rams rookie kicker, he's an issue. He's an issue. He's missed some big kicks. They clearly don't trust him. I think that factored into that 4th and 5 decision as well. It wasn't just, hey, we'll be up 6. Yes, that was part of it. It's also, we're not sure if this guy can make this field goal, and then the Bills will have the ball right here around the 50-yard line with a chance to just have a go-ahead touchdown or at least kick a field goal there as well. That's a big issue. They kind of had a bad snap situation where he ends up slipping and they don't get the extra point. It just seems like there's something every single week. I don't care if he was drafted, I think, in the 6th round. I've seen enough. I'll say it. Cut him. Sign another kicker. He just doesn't have it. I think that's fair to say. With some players in a position, you can kind of marinate on it, and it takes time. A kicker, you pretty much see it early on. They either have it or they don't, right? We saw that with, what was his name, Aguayo or whatever, that got picked in the 2nd round with Tampa Bay. Yep. You just have it or you don't as a kicker. That's your one job. You're a specialist. He doesn't have it. You could just tell he has no confidence. He doesn't have a big leg. He's not accurate. Cut the man, sign another kicker.
Can I interest you in a homecoming with Greg Zuerlein?
I would. I understand he had a rough period with the Jets, but you know what he did. He kicked the Rams to a Super Bowl. Sometimes guys that had massive success, they're down somewhere else, they come back. The difference with him is he's a proven NFL kicker. He's kicked in the biggest spots. This kid's a rookie. I just don't think he has it. I just, maybe he if they cut him, he latches on with someone else and he's a Pro Bowler. Maybe that happens, but I just think in this situation, if you're scared to kick him from the 40-yard line and beyond, that's awful. That's awful, and he shouldn't be on a team. He's missed kicks inside 40 yards. Hell, I think he's missed like 3 or 4 extra points this year. Like, it's not good enough. You need to cut him, and I'm very nervous every single kick he makes. I'm worried about it. Bright. With that being said, let's switch over to our picks and let's run through them quickly just because we're kind of running out of time here. So, ladies and gentlemen, we do apologize. But the Thursday night game, Rams-Niners, kicks off here tonight, 8:15, a monumental, massive game. If you're an NFC West fan, you're a fan of either of these teams. 6-7 Niners, 7-6 Rams in Santa Clara. The Rams had a shocking comeback win, 27-24 earlier in the season. They had no Puka in that game, no Cooper Kupp. Obviously, the Niners had no Christian McCaffrey. Niners were up, I think, like 10 or 13 points in the second half, and the Rams stormed all the way back to steal that game. It was an incredible game that ended up kind of getting them to the point where they are because they would have dropped to 0-3 if they lost that game. The Rams trying to go for 3 wins in a row against the Niners, dating back to last season after regular season-wise, they had lost like 7 or 8 in a row in the McVay era. This is a big game. You can end the Niners season tonight, and also you need this if you're the Rams because really only one team is coming out of the NFC West. That's going to be the division winner, and the way Seattle keeps playing, you can't fall 2-3 games behind them. Bri, I'll swing it over to you first. Who you got in this one?
Yeah, I think looking at this game, the smart money is probably on the Niners. I think there's going to be an overreaction to last week where the Niners, for the first time really in a while, actually looked like themselves. But for me, the caveat is it comes against the Chicago Bears, who we know are a dead
Yeah.
team walking and clearly didn't have any infusion of life following the coaching change. So I'm going to chalk it more up to beating a bad team last week, and I feel like are going to be more inconsistent, more weeks than not. So I'm going to take a shot here with the Rams. I like the way they're playing. Offense is back healthier. I know you're monitoring a couple key injuries with the offensive line and the defense.
Yeah.
I think a close game, definitely. I mean, a lot of times that's how these divisional games go. But give me the Rams in a close one.
Yeah, I have been monitoring it. I'm taking the Rams as well. I'm very nervous about that. I do agree. I think the smart money is on the Niners. They just kind of own the Rams. They do. But if this is ever a time to sweep them and end a really injury, kind of ridden Niners team this season, now is the time. I mean, this is a big gut check game for Sean McVay. I mean, he talked last week that, it was kind of a litmus test against the Bills. This is another one here on Thursday. You got to be Kyle Shanahan on a down year, get to 8-6, really have kind of a runway here with the Jets and three other division games I believe they have, in the Cardinals and the Seahawks as well, and somebody else I think is in there as well. This is a big game, and it looks like about 2 minutes ago, the only key injury for the Rams is going to be Kobe Durant, who's dealing with that lung contusion. He was spitting up blood on the sidelines in the Bills game, which, hopefully he's okay. It looks like Bo Limmer and Alaric Jackson, which were the two questionable offensive linemen, are going to play, and Emmanuel Forbes, recently signed from the Commanders, is active for this game at defensive back. So might see him out there. I'm very cautiously taking the Rams. This is going to be a very nip and tuck tight game, which is why I referenced Josh Carty. I think, unfortunately, the Rams might have to go for some fourth downs because they're not going to trust him, and I just don't understand why he is not cut from this team. In a close one, maybe 23-20, give me the Rams to pull this one out, and God, I hope so. As a shameless plug before we go on, if you go over to my friend Dylan, as you guys probably know, Super Deep Rot's Twitch channel tonight, that will be up going on there. Of course, by the time of this recording coming out, you're not going to see the live part of that, but there will be a VOD posted of it on the channel by the time you're watching this on Saturday. So if you miss me being live over there, commentating and live reacting to the Rams-Niners game, and you're interested, you could go watch the playback video that will be over there on the channel. Brian, with that being said, let's get into the Sunday games. 1 o'clock kicks off with the Cowboys and the Panthers. As I said, Panthers playing a lot better, but so have the Cowboys. I really think this team has shown up. This defense has played a lot better. Kind of a weird, funky game happened in their loss to the Bengals there with the block punt situation there. I'm going to take the Cowboys. I believe they have better overall players. Wouldn't be surprised if the Panthers pull an upset, but I think Micah Parsons is a game wrecker. I think he'll take over here. Give me the Cowboys.
Yeah, I'm taking the Cowboys as well. Carolina is actually favored, which is the first time in like eons
Yeah, I
that
think it's two
they've
and a
been
half years or
favored.
something like that.
Yeah, but the Cowboys, like you said, they're playing hard. The post Dak injury, Cooper Rush
Yeah,
has held his own. He played decently against the Bengals. I think they're playing for Mike McCarthy. He's coaching for his
shockingly.
job. There's talk that maybe he does come back. With the way they're playing, I can't say I fault them too much. I like what they're doing. It's not going to result in a playoff year, but I think they're going to be good enough to win this one.
The Chiefs go to the Browns. Potential trap game? I mean, who knows? The Browns are kind of a weird team. Jameis Winston throws pick sixes, can also throw for 400, 500 yards. And the Chiefs, we know, play extremely tight games. The last two games they've won against division opponents, they won 19-17 on kind of walk-off and muffed field goals, kind of respectively there, of the Chargers and then the Raiders. They've won the division, bribe. They're still technically competing for the number one seed, even though they have about a 2-game lead on Buffalo, but it is still important to them. I think the Chiefs are going to win this one. I'm not going to be entirely shocked if they lose another game here coming down the stretch. I don't think it will be here. Give me Kansas City.
Yeah, I think I saw they've lost outright, but their last 6 games against the spread, they have not covered the spread the
Hmm.
last 6 times.
Hmm.
So that just shows it's like close game after close game. I would expect no different. Wouldn't be surprised if the Browns pulled it out.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the Chiefs to pull it out. I think it's going to be another close one. I'd take them by a field
I
goal.
agree. And also, no, just recently signed DJ Humphries at left tackle. Looks like he's going to be out with a hamstring injury. He's not going to be there, and you're going up against Myles Garrett. So good luck, Patrick Mahomes. The Dolphins go to the Texans. The Texans coming off a bye here. The Dolphins sort of surging. This game playing indoors. We know what that does for Miami, but man, Houston needs this game. I'm taking the Texans. Would not be surprised if the Dolphins pull this one out. But Houston, quietly, they mess around here a little bit, Brian, start losing some games. Indy could steal this division from them. I'm taking the Texans in a close one.
Yeah, I'm going to go the other way here.
That's
Take a
fair.
chance with Miami. They weren't great in the Green Bay game on Thanksgiving. They bounced back. I mean, frankly, if they were playing any other team beside the Jets, I think they lose. It felt like that was a game the
Yeah.
Jets should have won, but in predictable Jet fashion, they let it get away. But like you said, playing indoors, that's good for that offense with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle starting to get back into the mix. How about Jonnu Smith has had these big last few weeks? Now, last game, he had no catches all game, and then he has all three or
Overtime
four
just
of his
goes off.
catches in
Yeah.
overtime, including the game-winning touchdown. So that's a weird one to remember for him. I'm going to take Miami in a close one. I just don't trust Houston.
It's
Something's been
fair.
off about them all.
Yeah, and that offensive line is rough. I just feel like you're coming off a bye. You've had 2 weeks to prepare. You better win this game. Speaking of the Jets go to the Jags in a game that I mean, Mac Jones won last week somehow, but scored 10 points through 2 picks, no touchdowns. I think Aaron Rodgers coming off his best game in years. The Jets are not good, obviously, but they can't be Jags level bad. Give me the Jets.
Honestly, I'm taking the Jags.
Damn.
I just this team right now, it just feels like what can go wrong will go wrong.
Yeah.
I just don't trust them to win, regardless of who the opponent is. I mean, it's just been brutal to watch. Even when they show some signs of life, they still find a way to lose it in the end. So they've been favored in a lot of these games,
Yeah,
and of course they
ridiculous.
find ways to lose. I think Jacksonville finds a way to beat them, to be honest
God,
with
and
you, and
and
that's a
also
very sad commentary.
it is, and also too, Devonte Adams. I think it was on Up and Adams, the K Adams show, had some weird analogy he was trying to talk about of how the Raiders trade to the Jets didn't work out, and I don't know what he was talking about. And then yeah, Garrett Wilson talking about they have kind of like a losing gene, and then Aaron Rodgers said maybe the franchise is cursed this week. I mean, what is going on? I mean, in the media going on in New York, I have no idea. The Commanders play the Saints in a game where the Saints looks like Derek Carr might be out for the season. The Commanders again, they're coming off a bye. They are fighting for their wild card life. I think down in New Orleans, they've had 2 weeks to prepare. Give me Washington.
Yeah, I think they lay the hammer down. Remember the last time we saw them, they blitzed the Titans.
They
They
did.
go up 28-0. That was a runaway game. I think that kind of cured a lot of their offensive ills that they had had the previous several weeks. So I think now coming off the bye, I would expect Jaden Daniels to be at his top form. I think
Baltimore goes to MetLife Stadium to play the New York Giants. I mean, the Giants they're awful. DeVito's going to be starting again this week that Dayball announced. The Ravens, again, they're another team coming off the bye. I think they are going to blitz the Giants. This might be like 40-7. I think this is going to be one of those games where Lamar goes insane. We know how he plays against the NFC. The last time playing a way better team in the Eagles, only the second loss against an NFC team in his career. Give me Baltimore huge if I had money on this game.
well, they're a huge favorite. It's like the biggest point spread in a year or two. 16 points, as
Yeah,
I'm seeing right now, as a road
I
team.
would take that.
Call me crazy. I mean, listen, I'm obviously going to take the Ravens to win the game. I might be crazy here. I actually think the Giants cover that number. I feel like
Okay.
the game
I
will
don't think
be
that's
within.
insane.
I mean, here's the thing. The Ravens defense is
It's
very
pretty bad.
forgiving. I
Yeah.
feel like Malik Neighbors could get deep for one or two. scores in this game, and the Giants maybe showed some sign. Look, I think it could be like 30-17, and that would cover the number.
It would.
So that's kind of where I'm going with this one.
No, that's fair. The final 1 o'clock game is the Bengals at the Titans, and two teams who, even though the Bengals are still mathematically alive, I mean their season's over. They're not a good team. I've been saying that all year when people in the actual media were still believing that this team was the Chiefs' greatest threat. I'm like, but they're not making the playoffs. They're finishing third in their own division. That being said, you're playing Tennessee and Will Levis over there. I think this game is going to be closer than you think. But given that performance last week in Tennessee against the Jags, I can't take them given the Bengals.
I'm taking Cincinnati. I feel like it'll probably play out similarly to Cincinnati's last game in Dallas, where they win a touchdown late. The Titans don't have much to offer, despite the fact that this Nick Westbrook-Akine feels like every game he's scoring a touchdown. He's got like 6 this year, and he has like 20 catches. Right, it's like almost a third of his catches are touchdowns. But yeah, I'm taking Cincy.
The 4:25 games kick off with the Patriots of the Cardinals, and the Cardinals, once leading this division by about a game and a half in the NFC West, have just dropped off the face of the earth. I was stupidly picked them last week against the Seahawks to bounce back. That being said, you're playing one of the worst teams in football in the Patriots. Give me the Cardinals.
Yeah, this might be a game where the Patriots hang around first half. Drake May does some things, but I think the Cardinals in the end pull away, get a big bounce back effort. I think it's one of Kyler Murray's better games, too.
Colts go to the Broncos, and as I said, the Colts are technically playing for a division leading spot right now. And if you're right and the Miami beats Houston, they win this game. They're only a game out. So it is getting really tight in the AFC South. That being said, I'm respecting Denver and what they have done this season. They just had some time off here with the bye. They're going to come back a little healthier, get some of their corners back. I think Bo Nix settles in. He's at home. They're going to win this game. I have no reason to trust Anthony Richardson. Give me Denver.
Yeah, and it seems like their offense really has settled in with Bo Nix and the weapons around him. Cortland Sutton having a very nice under the radar kind of season. It's played very well. The Colts have been kind of an enigma all season. They're up, they're down, they're this way, that way. I think Denver at home will get it done here.
One of the huge games of the weekend, Bry, the 425 America's, I would imagine, game of the week. The Buffalo Bills, the second time they're in that slot in back-to-back weeks, going to Detroit, 10-3 against 12-1, a massive game for both teams. Of course, Detroit trying to hold on to the number 1 seed, but also trying to hold on to their own division. They lose this game. All of a sudden, that Minnesota game gets a little bit interesting where Minnesota could jump them for the division, and they drop to the 5 seed. So massive implications there. We know Buffalo is still trying to keep pace and their outside chance for number 1 seed with Kansas City. I think this is a big, big game, obviously. But I'm expecting Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. They're getting Keon Coleman back. They're getting Dalton Connect back in this game. I think they're a little bit healthier than Detroit. I think Detroit is due for one. I'm taking Buffalo in this game indoors. I think they're going to win this one in a great matchup.
Interesting. Lions haven't been at their best the last couple weeks and against divisional opponents with Green Bay and previously against the Bears on Thanksgiving. I feel like we're going to get a more complete effort out of the Lions. I think player for player, they're just a little bit better than the Bills. Plus, they got the home field advantage. I think Detroit at home, I wouldn't be surprised if they won it by 10 points. I just think they are a little bit better than the Bills. They got that advantage. I think we're going to see them play at their best this game. I'm going home team.
A lot of great games. I think this is really where a lot of weeks on this show we've been good with picks. Feel like there's been some easier matchups. A lot of tough matchups to pick this week. The Bucks go to the Chargers in a 425 matchup here, and I think this is a great one. The Bucks all of a sudden in the driver's seat for the NFC South. They lost Godwin. Evans was down. We said, this team might be dead. All of a sudden, in Atlanta's floor, they've fallen through the floor, and the Bucks have stayed pace, have played well. But the Chargers, I think, are going to win this game. I think that defense is going to show up. They are playing a Bucks team that is solid, but they don't have the caliber of players that the Chargers do. It looks like Ladd McConkey is trending to come back in this game after missing last week. That is a huge weapon for Justin Herbert. I think the Chargers in really a low-scoring, probably ugly 16-14 kind of game, 17-14. I think they pull this one out and win it.
Yeah, well, you got to watch too the status of Herbert because he went out in that Sunday night game against the Chiefs,
Yeah.
did come back in, but I saw earlier this week it looks like it's another ankle sprain for him, so clearly he's not going to be 100%. I would think he's going to play, but it might be a bit of a question mark.
He's
So
questionable.
he's questionable. I mean, I would think he'll probably play. I'm going to go on the assumption that he plays, and I'm going to be with you and take the Chargers in a close one. But I agree, this is kind of an under the radar good matchup between two kind of feisty teams.
I will say as a caveat here, Bry, and this is the only time we're usually going to do this stuff. Maybe we should do it a little more often because we're recording this on Thursday. If Herbert doesn't play, would you pick the Bucks in this game? Because I'm going to give both of us the amendment right to change our pick because the game is 3 days from now. If he doesn't play, you're taking the Bucks.
I am.
I am also taking the Bucks. So I'm making that clear live on tape. We are going to take the Bucks if Justin Herbert is ruled out in this game. So just adding that as a little amendment in case somebody keeps track of this and looks at our win-loss and goes, "Hey, something's funny there." We're telling you that right off the bat. The final 425 game, Bry, is another excellent game. The 10-3 Steelers going into Philadelphia, 11-2 Eagles. We talked about the Eagles earlier. The Steelers haven't won a game in Philadelphia in many, many years. I got to look up the exact amount of years, but it's been like several decades since they've won in Philadelphia. It's crazy. That being said, Bry, I'm going to go out on a limb. The Eagles, a 5.5-point favorite. I'm taking the Pittsburgh Steelers to end that streak, go into Philadelphia amongst the turmoil, and win this game. Give me the Steelers.
Wow. That's a big one. So you've got two big road teams, the Bills going into Detroit, Pittsburgh going into their in-state rivals, knocking off the Eagles. That would be a big one. I'm expecting a close game. I don't think the Eagles by any means are going to run away with this one. The Steelers' defense consistently keeps them in games, along with Russell Wilson's play, which has been exemplary this year, you'd have to say. I think in the end, the Eagles extend the winning streak. I think they're going to find a way to pull it out at home. They got this streak against the Steelers, as you mentioned, at home. I feel like they're going to kind of put aside some of the issues, get A.J. Brown involved in the offense, get him happy and healthy, and the Eagles find a way to win this one.
Important note, George Pickens could potentially miss his second game in a row. That is a massive thing there for the Steelers. That does make me nervous, I'll be honest, in terms of picking them. So we'll see how that plays out. But for the moment, I think I'm going to stick with the Steelers here and ride with them. The Sunday night game is another big one, Bri. It is the Packers and the Seahawks. Some great matchups this week. Playing 9-4 Green Bay goes into 8-5 Seattle. I think the Packers, they are due for one. They need a win. They had a tough loss on Thursday night against Detroit. I think they go in, again, another road one, go into Seattle, win this game, give me Green Bay.
Yeah, I'm with you here. It feels like Seattle is a team this year where you think have them figured out. Like they win a couple games, okay, they're good, and then they have a setback. So now it feels like they're due for that setback. They're riding high off the win. They swept Arizona recently. They just beat them last week and really beat them handily. And I think coming back home, Jordan Love and company and the Packers have been a very solid team. I think are going to win this one.
Yeah, on a 4-game winning streak. But remember the stats for the season: Geno Smith, 14 touchdowns, 12 picks. Pretty not great. I've been saying
not great. Yeah,
I know a lot of people have been high on him. I don't see it. The Monday night games, Bri, one of those situations where there is double Monday night games. We come back to that. It is the Bears and the Vikings. Listen, the Bears are in disarray. I mean, they put up 4 passing yards in the first half against San Francisco last week. It's a division opponent. We've seen these two teams play where the Bears were neck and neck with the Vikings. I think it'll be a lot closer, but I just think the Vikings are a way better team in Minnesota. Give me the Vikings.
Yeah, not only the Bears in disarray, but you got the Vikings, whose offense has recently figured it out again. They went through that lull, but now you got Darnold just playing quality football. Where he throw five touchdowns last week against Atlanta. Jordan Addison, you wanted more, you got more. This guy,
I want some credit for that, Jordan. I'm inspiring people out here.
He goes for 3 touchdowns last week. Of course, superstar Justin Jefferson had 2 scores in his own right. You get both of them clicking along with the other weapons, Aaron Jones, TJ Hawkinson. They're loaded on offense. And yeah, I think they're going to handle the Bears easily, who to me are just completely a dead team at this point.
The other game, Bryce, is the less interesting game. It's the Falcons and the Raiders. And I mean, I'm going to take the Falcons in this one just because I think they have better players. And you're going to have Falcons' own Desmond Ridder. Looks like he'll be starting in this game for the Raiders. But Kirk Cousins has been horrific. I mean, what is he, like 0 touchdowns and 6 picks in his last 4 games? I mean, it's been a nightmare there in Atlanta. They lose this game, Bri. Next week, Michael Penix is starting. I'm just telling you that right now. They lose this game, Michael Penix will be starting their next game. I'd say 99% chance of that. For now, though, I think Kirk holds on to the job. It is imperative he plays better. Give me Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about those interceptions is a couple of them have gone the other way for touchdowns.
Yep.
I mean, he's getting pick sixed, and so it's really cost his team, but they're playing a team. The Raiders are just very bad. Quarterback situation, abysmal. Running back situation, abysmal. No weapons outside Brock Bowers.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not a good team, top to bottom. I think this has to be a game where the Falcons get off the schneid and that losing streak. I got to go with Atlanta.
Yeah, right now the Raiders hold the number 1 pick, and a lot of rumors that Shedeur Sanders, obviously son of Prime and the quarterback of Colorado right now, might end up in Vegas. We'll have to monitor that as the offseason comes. But guys, we have a lot to talk about when that comes. For now, that is the end of the show this week. I want to thank you all if you've been here so long. We try to get through that as quickly as possible. So still, we gave a lot of good content there. Went a little over the time even that I wanted to, so that works. Hopefully that content works for you guys. Brian, before we get out of here, any final things to say?
Well, good luck to you, of course, for 2 things. A, your football team, and B, your upcoming broadcast should be fun to watch. I plan on checking it out over on Twitch. And secondly, before we go, we got to just quickly mention there's a big baseball story, folks.
Yeah.
Juan Soto to the New York Mets, 15 years. 675 million. You heard those figures right.
765. The other way. 765.
Yes. So see, I didn't even get it right. But he was introduced in his press conference today. I didn't see it live. I'm sure I'll see some clips later. But the bottom line is they got a superstar in the fold for a long time to come. And of course, expectations ratcheted up for the Mets for a lot of years also.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Stealing him from the Yankees was also fun as well. Really, it's about the next 5 years because there's kind of an opt-out situation after the 5th year. The Mets have to do more in terms of kind of free agency and picking up some guys for the rest of really this month when free agency is going on. But right now, they've made some other moves with Clay Holmes and such. This is and Frankie Montas. This is a huge move. We know we're not a baseball podcast, but yeah, we'd be remiss without saying that. It's the biggest contract in MLB history. I think it's also kind of the biggest contract money-wise in all of sports history, I believe as well. Just an insane amount of money. Not necessarily agree with it. I think sports has gotten a little bit out of hand, is a lot out of hand actually. But this is what the market dictated. Steve Cohen, the owner of the Mets, he said he would spend, and boy did he. I'd be lying if I didn't say I'm really excited. Get a great hitter coming to Queens, and I'm going to be so happy when us and the boys are going to see a Mets game next season.
No doubt. The only thing I'll say before we get out of here is it changes the whole feeling of the Mets. Like last year's team kind of snuck up on people. The storyline was kind of cute, right, with the song and all the things they had go right down the stretch. Now they're going to be public enemy number 1, when teams play them. So it's going to be a little different. But if you win, hey, it doesn't matter how you win, and he's got to bring multiple World Series through the life of this contract. That's really what it's about.
At this point, I will take 1 World Series. I just want to see 1 in my lifetime as a Mets fan. But guys, that was a good final point to end on. Let us know the football part of this podcast, what you thought here down below. Give us your picks. A lot of excellent games this week. We'll monitor some of the big injuries. We kind of made that amendment with the Chargers game going on there as well. If Justin Herbert makes, I honestly might make a little amendment if George Pickens misses the Steelers game. I might actually end up switching to the Eagles there. So I'll also make that totally transparent and clear as well, just because he's such a massive part of that offense. But yeah, really fun one this week, Bri. Appreciate you getting on and doing it in kind of a little bit quicker fashion than we normally do. And yeah, follow me on Twitch on Super Deep Rod, Dylan's Twitch channel. I'm going to be doing that game. You can watch the VOD by the time you're watching this podcast. Follow us on Twitter. All those links are down below. And until next week of First and 10, guys, thank you for watching.